history has shown that it's not the most intelligent people or the most intelligent species that are the most successful. And it's not no necessarily those that work the hardest, although these things are very important. It is those who species and people who are also most adaptable. And so there's going to be great change in your lifetime. Okay. And so, yes, today it's artificial intelligence. But if you went back not long ago, we didn't even know artificial intelligence would exist the way artificial intelligence today exists. And the future will be like that. So when you're nailing it down, it used to be make sure that you know how to code. And then Claude Code comes along, and all of those who are coding are worried about their jobs. Okay. So what is it that matters? Okay. It is the approach to life in a sense that produces that, the general understanding and also the adaptability. I think a lot has to do with knowing yourself. That's why in building Bridgewater, the personalities of the person were very important in what suited their jobs. And then I built this a personality profile test. Then I made it online for anybody to go take. It's about 30 minutes. It's free online. It's called Principles You. That'll tell you a lot about your nature. Okay. But your goal is to find that nature and what are the paths. And there are several paths and they're constantly changing to find that nature. Okay. You experiment, you learn. Okay. But you probably were pulled into this job by your nature, right? And so, and you made it work. And here it is. It works in all of those dimensions, and it's like that for everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting because you look forward to the future, and I think if I was a young person at this stage and I was trying to set out where to aim my career, I would be more confused now than ever before, especially because they're also contending with this unemployability crisis amongst entry levels.
But if you're talking about you'd be confused because you can't anticipate the future, that's right. That's just the way it is, right? And if you say, what is it that I need given that reality? Okay, I need to learn, I need to know how to maximize the use of tools like AI to be able to increase what I know, and how do I use that to the best of my ability to be as useful as possible doing things that fulfill me.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's what you need to do. You're asking what you need to do. Just get over the fact that you don't know what the future is going to be like. So if you're looking for an answer, is it going to be a computer programmer? Is it going to be this or that? No, just maximize your ability to know, which is so easy to do nowadays, right? So maximize that, and then use that to maximize your usefulness and in jobs that make you happy. And that's the thing that that's the best I can give you in terms of more my 16-year-old. That's the best I can give them, because I don't want to mislead them that it's the thing, that it's the particular job. Okay. That'll mislead them.
You talked about this 80-year cycle, which results in this new world order. And it sounded like you were saying that near the end of the cycle, you see wealth inequality and you see the Gilded Age where some people have lots of nice things and other people at the other end are struggling. And this is a function of capitalism.
First of all, it's a reality that it's not only just a wealth gap difference. And if the majority system is not working for the majority, well, you're going to have a problem. And yes, it's contributed to these things where one wants to create more opportunity through education and through other basics, that there's a certain level at a floor that nobody should go underneath, because it's bad for them and it's bad for the society. And just to embellish on that point, my wife and I live in Connecticut. It's the On a per capita income basis, I think it's the second richest state, but 22% of the high school students have either dropped out of high school or are failing with absentee rates of greater than 25%. And as a result, a lot of it is gangs, shootings, drugs, and so on that leads to a lot of incarcerations. And the bill for incarcerations has become larger than the education budget. When you have that kind of cycle and so on, the system has to work for most of the people, and so on. So you have that dynamic, but it all comes down to productivity. And so the way I look at it is the government run by almost anybody can't make these things run well. I mean, governments do not make things run well. So what is it like to give them the money and expect that they're going to make things work well? And so you look at this set of circumstances and you say, who is going to make it work well? And I don't know the answer. And these are budget considerations and so on. You have to prioritize the things that make it work well. And you know what that is? That is educating people to be productive and civil. We don't talk enough about civility, how you work together to be able to achieve a productive result. And the way these cycles go, it's more likely that they're going to have a big fight and we're going to have, a debt problem and those kinds of things, than how we're going to come together and work out how to achieve this environment which takes care of wonderful education and productivity of people and all of that to make the society work better for most people. And that's the way it looks. And that's what's happened.
Capitalism leads to inequality, it seems.
Yeah,
So
that doesn't have to. There are some societies like in Singapore, some of the Scandinavian countries, some societies, there is a floor that everybody can have good education, adequate housing, and adequate health care, the foundations, okay? Because if you go below those levels, the society will pay terribly for it because those people will become liabilities, not assets of the society. They'll be disruptive.
So what about wealth taxes? Because this is the big debate now. The big debate in the UK at the moment is tax the rich. It's been all over our news over the last couple of weeks. The big debate in New York and LA is wealth taxes and tax the rich. Good idea, bad idea?
It's a very difficult idea in the following ways. I'm just talking about the mechanics. They have to sell the wealth, and that contributes to get the money to pay the taxes. That's one of those things that can cause the bubble to burst, as we're talking about.
Mhm.
And then operationally, it's very difficult, unlike if they did it as stepped up tax bases. In other words, right now, when you die, your capital gains gets put aside. And you don't have to pay capital gains taxes, you pay inheritance taxes. And there are ways that you can raise taxes and not hurt the economy. But we do have to realize that it will lessen investment, because what wealth is mostly used for is to put it into investment. So you have to do this at the same time, the improvements in those that are going to improve productivity, like education and so on. If you're just making transfer payments, wealth payments, and you undermine the productivity of the society by doing that, in other words, you're just giving it for consumption and so on, and the money's going from what was capital expenditures and those kinds of investments that make a better, more productive society to go to, in a sense, consumption and so on that doesn't produce that productivity, that's going to be a problem. So you have to think, how do you make people productive and how do you make your society productive for most people? Or you're going to have to find a way where you say that other group of people who is not productive, the overall society can have a higher level of productivity, but we're going to still establish this bottom that I'm talking about, the bottom in education, the bottom in conditions. And then you have to say who is capable of doing it. Building a society that will be productive.
Who is that?
Well, as I say, you have this dynamic problem that typically a privately owned, capitalist-owned business will do better than their government counterparty.
Okay, so a business is more productive typically than a government entity.
That's system.
So entrepreneurship. You need entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and capitalists. In other words, people who are capable of making the thing they're responsible for productive. Okay, run efficiently. So you need those indisputably. And if you're doing that in government, you need that in government in order to be able to do it. And government has its own, first of all, it doesn't attract many of those people. And then it also has, by its nature, knowing many people have gone into it, it is almost dysfunctional as it causes all of this arguing and problems. So those who want to be most productive tend not to go there. And also, it doesn't distribute well. These people they're not on the ground. They don't have the direct contact. They don't know what it's like. And as I'm describing, I see this
Politicians.
The politician who says, I'm going to, so you still have to come back to the question, who's going to make it run efficiently?